Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and Barbenheimer weekend has arrived! Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer versus Greta Gerwig's Barbie. They're both releasing in theaters right now, and all summer long, entertainment media has been hyping up this weekend as some kind of clash of the titans. You got your atomic big boy versus the plastic big doll. But if you can only see one this weekend, or if you're trying to figure out what order to watch them in, or just how to mentally approach these movies, I got you covered with a double review and an analysis of the uncanny historical parallels between these releases. They're kind of perfectly matched, if you ask me. A match made in hell. Quick note here, SAG-AFTRA has informed us that entertainment journalism outlets like New Rockstars are allowed to do reviews and analysis of movies and TV shows without violating any strike rules. They actually want us to review these movies. They want these movies to perform well so that the actors and writers get the successes they deserve. What you're gonna see here is a critical review and an analysis, not a paid promotion. We support the actors and writers on strike, and we join their call to the AMPTP to come back to the table and negotiate in good faith. First, why the hell are Barbie and Oppenheimer released in the same weekend anyway? Why do we have to fight? Why make us choose? Well, Christopher Nolan has almost always released his films in the third weekend of July. The Dark Knight, The Dark Knight Rises, Inception, Dunkirk, the original release date of Tenet before COVID pushed it back. That third weekend of July is a sweet spot. And so last year, Nolan released the first Oppenheimer teaser, claiming this release date, the numbers dropping like thuds on Robert Downey Jr.'s words. But until 2021, Christopher Nolan has almost always released his movies through Warner Brothers. Then 2021, due to COVID, Warner decided to release most of their theatrical films, with the exception of Tenet, on HBO Max. Godzilla vs. Kong, Mortal Kombat, Dune, The Matrix Resurrections, Wonder Woman 84, all came out on HBO Max. This made Christopher Nolan pissed, along with many directors, because most film directors make movies to be shown on big screens, and they believe that exclusive streaming releases cheapens the art form, and they are not wrong. So for Oppenheimer, Nolan left Warner Brothers and he took this film to Universal, and they rolled out the red carpet for this prestige filmmaker, and they poured a ton into the marketing for the film, which is why alongside Barbie, somehow Oppenheimer has still been hanging in there. Meanwhile, Warner Brothers, looking for a summer hit to counter program against Oppenheimer, selected Greta Gerwig's Barbie, a comedy and satire with fun party vibes and aimed more at women. But really, it's a movie for everybody. Why pick the same weekend and go head to head? Well, there's actually historical precedence, specifically with Christopher Nolan. In 2008, Nolan's The Dark Knight came out this same July weekend with Warner Brothers, while Universal counter-programmed with the release of Mamma Mia, the musical adaptation with Meryl Streep. Now, The Dark Knight, of course, went on to become one of the most profitable films of all time, but don't sleep on Mamma Mia. Mamma Mia also broke records in its respective categories. It was really a win-win for both studios and the motion picture industry as a whole. So it was actually a good thing that Universal picked that weekend to release Mamma Mia to counter-program, because people were just going to the movie theaters, and sometimes people just wanted another option of a movie to see. Because at the end of the day, folks, us content creators are not in competition with each other. We're in competition of other ways people can spend their time, like playing video games or reading or going outside. Boo! So how does all this set the stage for Barbenheimer? Well, Barbie is almost certain to win the weekend by a wide margin. Why? Well, the movie is shorter, 1 hour 54 minutes compared to Oppenheimer's 3 hours, and therefore Barbie can play on 1.5 more screens this weekend and give viewers way more options to see it. Oppenheimer will definitely be supported by the Nolan diehards, of which there are many. While the movie seems like homework, I think it's the kind of homework that might carry with strong word of mouth in the second, third, fourth, and fifth weekends. And before I review each film, here is my recommendation of which order to see them in. And feel free to disagree with me, but I think you should see Barbie first and then watch Oppenheimer. Now, if you already bought your tickets and you're doing it the other way around, that's totally fine. The other way works too. Like, if you're already someone who's committing to see both of these movies opening weekend, that means you're just a hungry film goer and you're gonna have a blast whatever order you see them in. But I'm talking to everybody else out there, the uncertain crowds, the people on the fence, the people who aren't really sure if they're gonna spend their weekend going to a movie yet. To all of you, I say Barbie first and then Oppie. Why that order? Well, Oppenheimer, in my opinion, is the better film. It's a more profound film-going experience, and Oppenheimer is more likely to stay with you and fill your weekend with interesting conversations between you and your friends and your family. Barbie, comparatively, is like a scattershot experience that casts a wide subject matter net on a lot of issues that may result in some debates and division among your community. So, quick review of Barbie. Greta Gerwig accomplishes something remarkable. She tells a story of Barbie as an iconic American product since 1959, both the good and the bad of that, and Barbie's relationship to our culture. As a film nerd, I loved how Gerwig rooted her story in the themes of The Wizard of Oz and 2001: A Space Odyssey, giving me a new appreciation and understanding of two films I thought I already overthought to death, Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling give the best performances of their career. I'm not kidding. And don't tell our Marvel followers, but Simu Liu and Kingsley Ben-Adir are way more entertaining in this than they are in the MCU. Now, my gripes with the movie are really just that at times it does feel overwritten. Greta Gerwig seems to be trying to solve every societal ill. I think there's not enough visual storytelling. Really, every visual is just kind of called out and described at length through dialogue. But hey, I think that's an admirable flaw for this film. I'd rather something be overwritten than underwritten, though some of the world logic does fall apart in the second act. It gets a little lost at times as to whose story this is, but it all comes together in the end with some of the most iconic and quotable lines of dialogue I have heard in a film in this decade. I think I prefer Greta Gerwig's work in Little Women and Lady Bird, but Barbie is just a goofy, hilarious, sexy beach musical with great songs and a lot of nerdy film references. I had a blast. 8 out of 10.
July is primo blockbuster season, so if you want to spend more of your free time at the theater, spend less time in the kitchen by letting Factor do the work for you. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in 2 minutes, which leaves you plenty of time to get to the theater early enough to watch the trailers. What can I say? I obviously love trailers. Factor is America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. You've heard me talk about HelloFresh, but Factor is now owned by HelloFresh. I use both. My life is twice as easy, twice as tasty. Factor lets me skip shopping, chopping, prepping, and cleaning, plus Factor has more than 34 weekly options, plus over 45 add-ons. You can even get cold-pressed juices, shakes, and smoothies. Beyond that, Factor offers Gourmet Plus meals as part of your weekly options. Gourmet sides include premium produce like broccoli and broccolini that perfectly complement your gourmet protein, which can be surf and surf, that's shrimp and salmon, or surf and turf, that's shrimp and steak. And I can tell you from personal experience, even after reheating, the steak is so good. It's not dry, it's not tough, it's just good. This month, I got some creamy dried tomato chicken. I've gotten this before, but I'm telling you folks, this is so freaking good. So head to factor75.com or click the link below and use the code ROCKSTARS50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Once again, that's factor75.com and use the code ROCKSTARS50 to get 50% off your first Factor box.
So, Oppenheimer. I have to admit my bias here. Oppenheimer is a movie designed more for someone like me, a disciple of Christopher Nolan's filmography and World War II history and just process stories starring Matt Damon with huge implications. And I can say Oppenheimer is truly one of Nolan's greatest films. The way this movie shifts point of view from vibrant colors of J. Robert Oppenheimer to the stark black and white of, well, Stark, is a structural return to form for Christopher Nolan, bringing him back to his work in Memento. I think a good storyteller can take a character you initially have little connection with and make you see the whole world through their eyes so that you feel the terror, the anxiety, the elation as much as they do. Watching this movie over 3 hours reminded me of the whole sensation of the docking sequence in Interstellar, when a task is not possible but it's necessary, and wanting the hero to simultaneously succeed, while in this case also really not wanting him to at all. That said, the movie does not need to be 3 hours, and the last hour does partake in some indulgent excesses. I don't think most audiences will hold that against the film, but at the end of the day, I don't think I or you will ever forget it. So, 9 out of 10. Now, I have said in several videos on the deep dive that every American movie is trying to be either The Wizard of Oz or Citizen Kane, and I owe you all a separate video breaking down what that really means, but essentially, Barbie is aiming for The Wizard of Oz, both internally in the references of the movie and structurally as a story of a young woman waking up from a dream, but Oppenheimer is aiming for Citizen Kane as almost a documentary point of view assessment of a cryptic American figure as a soul-searching cautionary tale. But both of these movies are tackling a third cinematic touch point that also should be mentioned in the same sentence as those other two films, Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. That film is a massive influence on Christopher Nolan. Interstellar was really his version of that film, and Oppenheimer explores similar themes of the dangers of technology and mankind's desperate sprint forward despite the consequences. The gadget weapon in this movie at Los Alamos is essentially this movie's monolith, and Cillian Murphy's eyes is essentially the eye of Hal. But Barbie, holy crap, this movie freaking opens with an amazing shot-by-shot homage of Kubrick's prologue from 2001: A Space Odyssey that we saw in the very first teaser for the film. And in this movie, the monolith is Barbie herself, and how she goes from a tool, an object, and evolves into sentience and free will. But unlike Oppenheimer, Barbie aims to leave us optimistic about that paradigm shift and kind of encourage us to love our artificial icons for the soul we assign to them in a way that I would say just kind of feels a little bit more icky and commercialized than, say, Toy Story. But both films will scald your rods and cones in your eyes with their vibrancy, and both demand to be seen on a huge screen, and both are going to be dominating your conversations in the weeks ahead. But I want to know from you, what's your plan to see these movies, and if you have seen either already, how do you rate them, and how do you recommend people watch them? My Easter egg breakdown of Barbie is coming tomorrow to the main Rockstars channel. My analysis of Oppenheimer is going to take a bit more time for me to unpack this movie. It's going to come next week. Subscribe to all 3 of our channels for analysis of the titles you love. Thanks for watching. Bye.